And Jesse, you will have to admit everyone into the meeting, and you can't share the host to someone else. You have to be the host because you are streaming it now.
Okay, that's fine.
Can you share that URL with me now?
But the stream is going on now. So is that correct,
Yeah.
Harish?
Yes, yes, you can see it. Just click got it.
Give me a second. Yeah. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second. Let me here's the chat. I need to find my chat. Okay,
you're sharing it with me? Okay.
I've just shared the link, yeah.
Okay. Whatever we are saying right now is public.
Yeah.
So Jesse, if you add me as a co-host as well, then I should be able to admit everyone who's going to join the call.
Okay, I've just done that.
Amazing, thank you.
Whatever we are saying right now is public. Yeah.
How do we stop that repeating?
Then I should be able to admit
everyone. Can I close my YouTube video because it's just going to repeat back to me quite a lot, I think.
It may have been that someone else was not on mute, and that's why it echoed back. So if everyone can put themselves on mute, it should be fine.
I was watching it on my phone. It's live.
Okay, is there anything we want to do next now? Cyrus, you were talking about the order.
We are live right now, Jesse.
Okay. That's cool.
Good evening, all. We just wait for another couple of minutes. I see frantically everyone signing in so that nobody misses out. We just wait a couple of minutes and then we start after that. Hi, good evening all, and welcome to another edition. The HCL and the SRFI under the HCL Squash Podium program have partnered with squashskills.com to provide a high-level squash coaching and training virtually. This initiative allows you to learn from the world's best players and coaches. In addition to this webinar series, our partnership with Squash Skills offers a very special discount to access Squash Skills content for all iSpin members. Let's get straight to it. The host for today is a former world number 55 from South Africa, Jesse, and our guest will be 10 times British national champion, former world number 1 and world champion, Nick Matthew. Today's topic is mental toughness. It's something we always talk about. It's time to hear from the best. The floor is yours, Jesse and Nick.
Thank you very much, Cyrus. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Nick. How are you keeping today?
Good. Thanks for the welcome, Cyrus. Great to see you both.
Good stuff. So, yeah, as Cyrus says, you know, Nick and I think we really get into the subject. We love mental toughness. We love talking about it. I'm lucky enough to have interviewed Nick a few times, and who better to have on the show than Nick Matthew himself. So me and Nick have been going back and forward for the last week or so and trying to drill down into some of the key details around mental toughness. And that's what we're going to try to present to you today. So just want to run through quickly like the plan we have today, and then we'll get started and be quite fluid with it. I think the main thing we're going to really drill down on today is we're going to analyze the World Open final in 2013 where Nick played Gregory Gaultier. So that's going to be quite a big part of how we're going to do this. I've timestamped loads of different parts of the match. Nick has been very kind enough to talk about different mental states he was in during that match. And that's going to take up the majority of the session. But at the end, we're going to build in time for maybe a 10 or 15-minute Q&A. And the big thing about today, everyone, is during this analysis is we want to make it as interactive as possible. So yes, you can watch and see what Nick and I talk about, but please do join in. And what I mean by that is Nick and I have got 5 quiz questions we're going to be putting in at different points of the session today. And today's session, I believe, is sponsored by Puma, and there's going to be some Puma swag and gifts to be able to give away. So whoever's able to answer these quiz questions in the quickest amount of time will be able to get some of these goodie bag items. So we'll spring them on you at different points. So we're testing your focus and concentration, maybe a part of mental toughness we might talk about as well. And during the analysis as we go, please do put some questions in the chat box. I've been lucky enough to have a few questions sent in by Cyrus. So I've got 3 or 4 questions at the end already for the Q&A. But as we're talking, if you feel like you want to put some in, great. We might not be able to get round to all of those, but we'll try our best to be able to do it. Okay, so that's the rough format of it. There's a lot to cover, everyone. So I'm not going to dwell too long on anything in particular. And I think Nick and I are going to try our best to keep it as concise as possible. We do love a chat, and we could probably do this for 3 hours. So I'm sure we'll get to the key points. But hope everyone's concentrating because we're straight into a quiz. So the first question, how many titles has Nick Matthew won? And it's a multiple choice, so don't have to rush yet. So it's A1, B2, or C3. So if anyone wants to put that into the chat box, how many world titles has Nick Matthew won? A1, B2, or C3? I'll wait for a minute, see if anyone wants to put that into the chat, and we'll have Sandra, I think, monitoring the chat box to get some names out. So I'll give you another 20 seconds. A1, B2, or C3. How many times has Nick Matthew won the world title?
You would have hoped Cyrus would have got that one right, wouldn't you? I've been disappointed by his answer so far.
Well, as Cyrus was talking, I was a little bit like, oh, is he going to kind of say it? Not. I think he mentioned a world champion, but that maybe left it a little bit vague. Is it a 1-time, 2-time, or 3-time world champion?
I think he's teasing because he definitely knows the answer.
Definitely teasing.
Awesome. Okay, right. So, right, let's move on. So, Nick, I've just got my screen shared with you now, and this is part of the match we're going to go through, right? So my very first question to you, Nick, is can you give us some context around this match and the lead up to it?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, welcome everyone. You know, we're going to get stuck into the specific topic of mental toughness today. Obviously, there's so much to talk about in this match, from a sort of, you know, a tactical, psychological, and, you know, physical, technical, so many standpoints. We're going to concentrate on the psychological aspects. And this is a World Open final in Manchester in 2013. Now, this is in my home backyard, predominantly English crowd. It was live on BBC. I think there was about 1 million viewers, so a fantastic occasion. Greg had actually beaten me in the final of the US Open about 2.5 weeks prior to this match. Now, he'd beaten me in straight sets very comfortably, probably 35 minutes. And he'd sort of duffed me up, to be honest, for want of a better term, on the day. He'd made me look very stupid, as only Greg could do. He was one of the best players in terms of, when he was on form, getting people off in that under 40-minute, 45-minute mark. He was incredible at that, very ruthless when he was in the zone. And he did that to me in the US Open final a couple of weeks before. So I went out, and actually walking back to the hotel with my coach after that match in Philadelphia, I said, I'm going to beat him in the Worlds. And I think my coach didn't believe me at the time, and I perhaps didn't believe me. Maybe it was a bit of bravado there. But I was very conscious of setting my stall out from the word go and trying to show to him that I wasn't scarred by that previous match at the beginning of this game. And you can see I sort of squeezed that first point there with a sort of tight straight drive, and to me that was the perfect way to start, really letting him know that I'm not going to go anywhere, and this first part of the first game is going to be tough.
Nice. And yeah, like it's interesting, the you said mental scarring, and I'm going to loop around to that right at the end today as well, because it's quite an interesting story what happened after this match. But yeah, like where did that come from? Like that statement you said to DP about, I'm going to win the World Open. Was that a little bit of, I suppose, if I'm going to be blunt, empty positivity to try and kind of boost you up, to try and leave it? What happened there when you said that?
Could well have been, yeah. Could well have been a sort of a bravado, like I said before. Just lost the match and wanted to make myself feel better instantly by saying something like that. It was actually unusual for us to walk back. It was 30 odd blocks, and we just took a stroll and sort of just, thrashed it all out. And, he was just better than me on the day. And sometimes you just got to say, okay, didn't do much wrong. Don't need to panic. There was no guarantee that I was going to play him, of course, in Manchester 2 weeks later. That was the thing. So I couldn't put all of my eggs in that basket of playing Greg. We had to both get to the final for that to happen. And we beat Rami Ashour and Mohamed El Shabagi in the semi-finals, respectively. So, tough path. I think I beat Shabana in the quarters. Tough path to get to play each other. But weirdly, I sort of had a feeling it was going to happen. We were both on form and we were both playing well coming into the event.
Yeah. Okay. So that leads me on to almost, I'm just showing some slow-mos of these first few rallies, because I know when we share this on Zoom, if we play it at real time, it is a little bit kind of glitchy and buggy, the video. So I will be doing some slow-mo stuff, also playing in real time. But I suppose the question, Nick, now you've had a great tournament, you're in the final, there might be all this build-up mentally in your home backyard, you played Greg. What's your intentions at this moment? So the first rally, you said that great backhand squeeze, but what's your mantra? What's your game plan? How are you trying to quiet those voices that could escalate quickly and make you take you off task?
Yeah, well, what happened, obviously, I always used to really benefit from having that fresh, recent experience in the back of your mind. That really simplified the process for me. The fact that I'd played him very recently meant that I didn't have to overthink the tactics. I could keep it really simple. It was almost in my muscle memory, which was a really big part of my plan going in. And, telling myself any mantra has to be simple. I remember in Philadelphia that he made it hard. He wasn't giving me any points in the first game. No errors, no easy points. He was getting everything back. And I sort of went a bit cheap, a bit too soon, and made probably 3 or 4 soft errors that gave him even more confidence in the first game. So I just was telling myself, one more shot, keep it tough. Also have a real presence on the tee. I tried to sort of, he was catching me out with lots of low angles in Philadelphia, and I consciously went a little bit wider on the tee to try and establish a little bit more of a presence around the middle and let him know sort of with my body language that I was going to be there from the word go. You can see the way I'm standing on the tee. I sort of really deliberately went extra wide, just as a sort of, as much as a technical thing, a psychological thing, to let him know that I was there, and again, not scarred from that last match.
Yeah, that was something I think we all admired in you in your career. You definitely had that big presence on the tee. And the one time we played, I think I tell everyone, it felt like I was in a phone box playing squash, and it felt like I was on a football field. Like, it was just so big, the space I had to cover, and it felt like you were in a phone box. You hardly had to cover the space. So I can testify firsthand to that feeling of claustrophobia on the court.
Yeah, and it was all about, in this match, it was all about a good start. As I said, the match in Philadelphia had gone down 3-love. Just off the top of my head, it was kind of 5, 6, and 3, the scores. And he just was too good on the day. And I just said to myself, the start of this game is crucial. I always felt confident against Greg if I made the first game or 2 long and I managed to come out, even if I would sign at the start of the match to come out the first 2 games 1-all against Greg. Against most players, normally you would be greedy and say, well, why can I not be 2-love up? But against Greg, I would literally have signed every time to be 1-all, because the longer the match went on, I felt like it sort of played a little bit more into my hands. Yeah,
totally get that. Okay, cool. A great start as well. Like, I think we saw of 3 of your first rallies, 2 of them were backhand squeezes along that back wall. What does that do for your confidence? Obviously, that's a great go-to shot of yours. Just talk about when you saw those couple of things happening at that moment.
Yeah, it's always nice. Of course, you can have the best plan in the world. It's always nice just to get those first 2 or 3 points under the belt, especially in a big final. Settles the nerves. Players will tell you they're not nervous, but they are. And I think we learn to embrace it. It's a good thing. If you're not nervous, you're not ready, kind of thing. And you see there, I just worked around a bit of variation. Won the first 2 points with squeezes on the backhand, and that was something I'd worked on in practice, because he won the battle down the backhand, and then I just throw in a boast as a bit of a variation. You can have the best psychology in the world, but it has to be mixed with good sort of tactical play and technical play, of course, as well.
Totally. So hope everyone's still with us because it's quiz time again. I've got the next question coming up. Remember, there's some Puma swag up for grabs, people. So question number 2, use the chat box. There's an A, B, or C answer. So maybe listen to it first and then throw an A, B, or C in. So the question is, how many months was Nick Matthews at world number 1? How many months did he stay at world number 1? So A, 14 months, B, 19 months, or C, 25 months. So again, the question is, how many months did Nick Matthew stay at world number 1? How many months was he at world number 1? A, 14, B, 19, or C, 25. So put an A, B, or C in there, whatever you think that may be. Give you another 20 or 30 seconds. Okay, great. I'm going to go forward to another timestamp and ask you a question here now, Nick. So we discussed at the beginning of the game, how you get yourself into it, how you're trying to leave your mental scars aside for a bit, and some of the tools that you've used for that. So I'm just going to talk about this a little bit now. And the question I've got for you is, this is towards the end of the first game. So what's going on here in your mind, more so tactically? So, you know, it's 8-9, you've just got that point to go 9-all, end of the first game. Can you frame it up for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I got that great start, and then Greg sort of brought me back into his sort of spider's web where I felt like I was reacting. He was in front, he was controlling the court, moving in a phone box, as you said. And I remember being sort of 9-7 down, and that's not a bad result, by the way, against Greg. You know, I was in the match, he could often steamroll people, and I just made a conscious point of trying to win that battle down the backhand side. So there was 2 things I did. One was use a little bit more extra height down that side to sort of get back in front. And then the other thing, once I was in front, tried to take the ball into the front left. I felt like maybe by being tough, by trying to be strong, by trying to extend the rallies, giving him no easy points, I actually went a little bit passive with my hitting. Didn't take the ball in short, maybe when the option arose. So I tried to really attack, you know, with a margin, you know, not conscious again of not making any errors. And I think I got a couple of winners into that front backhand, which again is a confidence corner for Greg. So I took great confidence at sort of beating him in his favourite corner.
That's really interesting you say that. So I think I've heard you say that.
Sorry, Jesse, you can see there as well, you know, just that little cutaway. The crowd are really starting to get into the match at this point as well. You know, it's a home crowd, predominantly English. And, you know, just when I start to come back into it, you could sense that sort of anticipation. Obviously, it's like a football crowd. They're at their most quiet when things are not going well. And then the loudest when you sort of score a goal or things going well. So sort of 3 quick winners in a row really got the crowd sort of up and loud, and I sort of fed off that momentum really. And I felt Greg maybe go into his shell just a fraction.
Nice. Well, that was kind of part of the question I was going to ask is, obviously you've taken Greg on where maybe one of his super strengths are. So it's quite interesting if you can identify someone's strength. I suppose the question I'm asking is, do you stay away from their strength, or do you actually go at certain points back yourself to go, I'm going to actually take this away from you because that can scar the opponent? What do you think of that as a bit of a continuum about staying away from their strengths or actually taking it on a bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at the highest level, sort of under pressure, that is such a fine margin as well, trying to find that sort of sweet spot between those 2 things. Obviously, you know, you're trying to play to your strengths whilst avoiding your opponents. But when you're talking of 2 of the best players in the world, there's going to be some crossovers there. And of course, you know, you're not going to find glaring weaknesses with someone like a Greg. You've just got to try and chip away and back your strengths whilst trying to keep it as best as you can away from theirs. Now, like you said, that's a fine line. And I just tried to maybe lift him a little bit deeper into the back corner and get a bit more of a back wall length. And I think you can see there I lifted again, just trying to establish a bit of time on the tee so that then at least when I did go short, I wasn't off balance and he was in position when doing so. I could at least attack when I was completely balanced, and that was the game plan. I'm trying to mix the height there as well on the backhand, so it's not just high. A good tactic is only as good as before you start overdoing it. You know, I've seen people try to avoid opponents' strengths and not hit there at all. I remember playing Simon Rosner, and my game plan was just don't hit a single shot to his forehand, but then I only made him move to half the court. So I had to find a way to work. You know, you've got to dip your toe in the water a little bit just to keep the game sort of honest in a way.
Yeah. And just reflect with me the crowd, because I've watched this match a couple of times, and boy, they were great, weren't they? There was some real kind of vibe here. And again, maybe this is a big thing to say, but arguably was this one of the best crowds you might have played in front of? And if it was some of the reasons it may have been or may not have been, and how did this all help the whole environment that you were playing in there?
Yeah, that was a great atmosphere then when he got the stroke, and you know, Greg obviously went straight to the review.
There we go. Thank you. If everyone can just make sure we're on mute. That's great. Thank you. Sorry, carry on, Nick.
Obviously, it's a great feeling of relief when that sort of review came up. I sort of knew that was a stroke, really, and perhaps the crowd sort of having that shout sort of influenced the ref and not changing their mind there. But, you know, I certainly felt that wave of momentum that the crowd had given me, and it was certainly the best crowd I think I played in front of as a home player. You know, I played in front of big partisan crowds as the away player in the Middle East and in France against Greg, but the English crowd are often known as being a little bit more reserved. You know, think Wimbledon, think the sort of polite clapping and being fair to both players. So this was definitely one of the better crowds I'd played from a home point of view, and it definitely carried me through, as we'll see later in the match.
Nice. Awesome. Great. Thank you. Okay, so going to fast forward to the end of game 2 now. So we can see here the score is 10-8 up. I suppose the question I have for you now is, any different thoughts or any different ways of thinking? Again, I keep coming back to this idea of these narratives people create in their head and how this can start to excuse me, spiral away. What you're thinking here, and then also how can you just keep yourself grounded? How do you keep coming back to the task at hand?
Yeah, it was remarkable how similarly the first and second games played out in this match. You know, got a good start. Greg was stronger in the middle phase, and then just towards the end, sensed a little bit of nervous energy with him and was able to sort of come through on the big points at the end of the game. Now, the key here is just staying present in the moment. As I said, I would have signed for 1-1, but on the verge of a 2-love lead, it's then easy to get carried away and play the score rather than the rally. So, you know, I was really conscious of sticking to the plan, which was to build the rallies, nothing easy, and looking for that moment of attack when the opportunity presented itself. And I think this was one of the best matches in my career in terms of really blending that patient attacking into play. I think that was a close to a stroke as well, but just sort of, you know, resetting. I think the reason he put that on was just, you know, I had a little smile, didn't get too caught up in talking to the referee, which I might have been liable to at times, just sort of had a wry smile and then just went straight back onto the task, which was what I could control.
And that's such a powerful message, isn't it? You know, I think, you know, this is obviously a whole career's worth of honing to get to this point. As well, you could just turn it on in a match. But I can imagine maybe a younger Nick Matthew in the same situation, all of a sudden is just having a little bite at the ref and just that little moment of taking you off task in a way. So the question I'm trying to ask you is, do you have any tools or protocols to keep you grounded? I think that's a huge thing I'm working on with my players, is trying to find their method for their personality that keeps them in the moment, that keeps them present. What do you think about that?
100%. And for me, I always felt like that revolves around the serve. Having that ball in hand, you're in control of the pace of the game. You know, sure, you can still have a mantra when you're the one receiving, but it's not then kind of, and you could take your moment, wipe your hand, whatever it is. But when you're the server, you can really take that to the next level. And, you know, without taking forever in between points. You can see even Nadal, you know, the other day in tennis, it was reported that he was borderline taking too much time, but he's really centering himself and resetting himself, whether that's bounce of the ball, a wipe of the sweatband, whatever it is, whether that's a little bit of positive self-talk, a key word. And I was really big on just having that little routine, a little bit like a golfer does before they hit each shot, a little pre-serve routine that was like clockwork each time. And I might, if I felt a bit nervous, take 1 or 2 more seconds on that just to make sure that it was really deliberate and it had really reset me in between each point.
So this is an interesting little moment now. 10-8 up, had a nice backhand, right shot you played, clipped the top of the tin. So I don't think you would choose a different shot there. What's going on at now 9-10? Gaultier serving, Again, maybe it's slightly different because you said when you have the ball in hand, there's a certain way you go about it. What's your viewpoint for maybe not a match point, but losing one of those game points and not quite getting it back? So what are you thinking now on this return to serve?
Yeah, it's funny how you remember certain matches vividly and others you sort of can't remember hardly anything. And this one I remember very vividly. And I remember telling myself at that moment in time, that was it. That was a good rally. Same again. You know, don't panic and go into your shell just because you made that one error. To me, that was the great rally, the rally I played before. You could see I set it up, the opportunity was there, and just didn't quite execute the shot as well as I would have liked, you know, but it was an execution thing rather than a mindset thing or a tactical thing. So the message that I sent to myself there was same again.
Nice. And here we go. Let's watch the remainder of this game. Good little lift to that deep forehand, just changing the pace a bit. It was getting obviously a bit claustrophobic on that backhand side.
I know you like that one as well. And I think that was something that I just started, you know, any tactic is only as good as, you know, they start to get used to it, right? So I know I was trying to lift on that backhand side. And in this game, I took a few, you can see another one there, took a few across just to vary things up without sort of keep him honest with his tee position, stop him creeping across to that left-hand side.
And how hard is Greg to play in this situation? You know, because he does take his space, as we all know, on that backhand when it's a little bit loose mid-court here. So, you know, it's this kind of area where, look, you're having to scramble. There's a bit of body contact. We'll talk about these little exchanges, how he can help players when there's this little bit of traffic, but you can't initially get a let. Where do you go to mentally for this?
Again, I think this is the thing spoken about, finding that sweet spot, that balance between two things. And this is a great example of finding that balance. So for me, I felt like, again, in Philadelphia, he bullied me a little bit, bossed me around the middle of the court. So in this match, I wanted to stand up for myself like I did there, sort of worked my way through the interference and tried to play the ball. You know, didn't want to sort of seem like I was the one complaining to the ref and get a no-let on big points. Wanted to show that I was going to, you know, be strong, sort of work my way through that interference. When I say work, I wasn't afraid at times to sort of put a little bit of a nudge in there and let him know that I was there, you know, from time to time. I didn't want him to take liberties with his movement. But then it was important that then I just was quiet, get on with it and not get involved in too much kind of back and forth. He's blocking, because I know that if that's the case, it shows my quality of shot and my clarity of thought is not quite there as well. So I was trying to find that balance in that. And I got my rewards there. You can see 2 shots later, it's probably, I think I'm biased, of course, but it was probably another clear stroke on review.
Of course it was, Nick. Of course it was. No, genuine it was.
Yeah, but joking aside, a bit of, you know, credit to Greg there, because I think quite often in matches these days, I see players using their reviews up in the first few rallies of a game. And I think that's sort of, you know, I'm sure there was decisions he wanted to review, but both games, all right, he didn't get the review overturned in his favor in both games, but at sort of 10-9 in both games, he still had a review left up his sleeve. And I think that's a kind of credit to his sort of mental, even though the intensity of the match is there, you've still got to have that clarity of thought, you know, during that time.
And that's a huge thing I think we've spoken about, and all the deep research I'm doing around the mind. It's the word I keep coming back to, the word I keep hearing athletes say is clarity. It's not about running harder or trying for every single shot or just kind of running like a headless chicken. They say like one of the toughest things to do is be mentally clear and in the moment, you know, this groundedness, this presence. What do you think about that as not necessarily your definition of mental toughness, but if there is a definition of it, great. This idea of clarity, Nick, where does this sit with you in regards to your mental toughness side of things?
For me, it's huge. You know, as a young kid, mental toughness was referred to as sort of a bit of a general statement. You've got to be mentally tough, you know, as a thing. And you just sort of thought, you know, you're probably guilty of thinking that meant, you know, being tough and sort of swing, you know, like a boxer swinging wildly at their opponent in the sort of metaphorical squash sense, and just being tough and aggressive. And I once said to George Parker in between games, you know, being mentally tough doesn't mean you have to knock your opponent out. You know, there's many ways. Someone like a James Willstrop is one of the mentally toughest competitors I've ever come across, but he's also one of the sort of quietest and sort of in his own kind of bubble. So there's so many different ways of going about this, and it's about sort of fine-tuning what that means to you. And a lot of it is the sort of unsaid things, you know, the unwritten things like body language and those little words in your head. And, you know, as I said, it's very much not about shouting or screaming aggressively and, you know, outwardly being tough, because you can be outwardly tough, but inwardly be as fragile as a pack of cards. You know, it's sort of ultimately it's that deep down, deep within you sort of toughness that comes to the fore.
Great, thanks for sharing your kind of viewpoints on that. And yeah, definitely the George Parker analogy kind of rings true here. And she was one of the questions. But before we go to our next quiz question, last little thing I want to talk about here. So you between games 3 and 4 now. So between games 2 and 3. So you're 2 love up. What's going on here mindset wise? Obviously DP's in your corner. You're 2 love up in the World Open final. What might this conversation look and sound like with your coach at this moment?
Yeah, again, really simple. DP was really good in between games. You know, quite often he let me sort of thrash it out myself. I like to sort of be quite verbal in between games and just say and just go and just sort of rabbit on lots of different things. And he was great at just making sense of all those thoughts into maybe one thing. It was like the equivalent of putting everything into a little sieve, and then out the bottom came the sort of 1 or 2 things. And there was maybe one tactical point, keep switching it to that forehand, I think was something that was made at the right times, and just stay present in the moment. Don't get ahead of yourself by the score. Stay present in every rally.
Super, cool. Okay, quiz time, everyone. Hope everyone's still here. There's some real nuggets, and I'm, again, as always, when I speak with Nick, just absorbing them and going to reflect on them. But quiz time, so I hope everyone's keyboards are at the ready, fingers twitching on A, B, or C. So the question is, where is Nick Matthews' hometown? Where does he come from? Maybe the clue that he still lives there. A, is it Derby? B, is it Sheffield? Or C, is it London? So again, Nick Matthews' hometown. A, Derby. B, Sheffield. C, London. I know he's super proud of his city, his football team. So yeah, I'm sure hopefully those that know Nick semi-well will follow him. There'll be a lot.
Not so much my football team at the moment.
Where are they? Are they relegation battle or not quite?
Just nowhere. That's what you need to know.
Nowhere. Fair enough. Okay, right. So let me go forward to this little next bit. Let me just get my little timestamp. Okay, so here we are, Nick. You're 2 love up, match ball up. Nice little celebration in the front there, looking confident. The question I'm going to ask you is, how the nerves at this point? So what's going on with the nerves? I suppose that's quite an obvious one, match ball up in the World Open final.
Yeah, you could see the little sort of hop and skip there. I think certainly I used to have this weird thing when I felt my adrenaline. I used to feel it surging through the sort of top of my head. And I definitely needed to take a couple of moments there just to reset. You know, perhaps if I had this one again, I would just take an extra moment, maybe walk to the back, just take slightly longer over my routine. You know, it's not like I rushed there, but I just remember this going in the blink of an eye. You know, I deliberately took a moment, and it seemed like match ball came and went. I snatched at one, and he put it away. But there I had a chance to hit a poor volley, and before I knew it, he put it away. And I think that, you know, maybe I was expecting a longer rally, and I had sort of a chance that I should have stepped forward onto a volley, and I was going back if you watch it. So maybe I was sort of too busy settling in. Who knows? It's easy to sort of second guess in hindsight, but I definitely went back on the volley there. I could have stepped forward and been really aggressive on that. Took the safety option, played the poor shot, and it got punished. And I think the next 2 points went equally as quick, and before I knew it, was sort of back in the corner. Not quite in as good a position as before.
Yeah, and I bet you wish that rally was, even if it was like 3 or 4 shots long, you know, you could almost like settle into it at that point. But serve, return, you hit something onto his rackets, you know, it's just rally over at that point. So yeah, and then yeah, I think there's a bit of a delay here with a little review court service, so we won't stick around on this one. So let's watch these last few rallies. Being 2 love up, and now it's 11 all.
Yeah, trying to remember at this point in time, you know, especially when I went on to lose this game, that actually, you know, going back to your plan at the start, you know, you're disappointed that you've lost and that you're in this position, you've lost the 3rd game, but remembering that at the start of the match, you'd have signed for that, you know, you would have you know, you would have taken being 2-1 up, and just trying to remind yourself that the glass is half full at this point, because, you know, if you're not careful, as we'll see in a minute, sort of things can get away with, you know, can run away quickly if you're not careful.
Yeah. And I think you got told at this point that it was down, and yeah, very honestly, you just like, right, you understand. Was that the French contingent telling you that it was down?
It was my corner. I think because sort of my head was down there, you couldn't see, and it looked to me like it could have spun out the corner, possibly even there on the replay. And so I looked to my corner, and they sort of said, "It's hard to say, isn't it, on this, whether it hit the top of the tin or whether it caught the corner."
Because you've hit it such on the frame, it's going to have this massive spin anyway.
Who knows?
And
looks like possibly just clipped on that one. It looks like possibly just clipped the top there on that slow-mo. So, yeah, they just gave the heads up. Very close anyway. And they just gave me the heads up just to sort of say, yeah, it was down. And on the, you know, the thing with me and Greg, we always played hard, but there was never a double bounce. There was never anything dodgy going on in terms of that. So there's always that mutual respect there.
I definitely got that when I watched you two play in particular as well. So have you spoken to Greg since his retirement, out of interest?
Yeah, I went there. I went out to Mauritius and had a great week with him,
Nice.
and really enjoyed it. So, you know, I said if he wants to come back and then retire again, I'll join him on the next one as well.
That's good. Just come back for one tournament, retire both straight afterwards. Yeah. And then I suppose I know we focus on you here, but we do miss the celebration a bit, don't we? I think the tour is just a little bit less without these celebrations going on. So it's quite good to see.
Greg's an absolute character, nightmare to play, but you know, at the same time, sort of a pleasure to watch.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this little next bit here. I'm just going to get to the beginning. So now you're you know, match ball, lost the match ball. Start of the fourth game. Talk about where this is at, because I think when we were reflecting before, you said something, you were dwelling on something, and there was some residue of the previous game. So what do you think happened in this moment?
I think you know, the plan was to reset, start again, but it didn't quite pan out like that. He got a good start in this game. I tried to come out there with positive body language, get on the front foot again. Of course, Greg had the momentum now. He was sort of really flying around. You can see the pace has gone up here. I did get the start on this game, but then maybe just somewhere, even just 5-10% in the back of my mind, just dwelling on what could have been with that match point. And this game, unfortunately, gets away from me a little bit too quickly, really. Lost the sort of rhythm, lost the accuracy. You know, the rallies are a little bit shorter. We saw that back end of the third game. There was a little bit more back and forth with the rest. There was a few reviews. And I just felt like the game got a little bit disjointed, and I needed to just find my game back at this point.
Yeah, and you can see in this moment, you know, 2-8 down, you know, and again, there's that residue hanging on. And listen, we're all human. I can imagine there was a bit there. So that probably leads me.
I always tried though. You know, even if the game was 8-2 down, I sort of very, very, very rarely let a game go. You know, the chances were I wasn't going to win that game. But at that point, I'm just sort of saying, right, you see, I came back to 7-10 there. Can I just get back on the front foot a little bit to set me up for the fifth game? You know, if I lose that game 11-2 and let it go, then I might be 4-1 down quickly in the fifth before I've responded. So for me, that part of the fourth game there, where I just put a little bit of work into his legs again, I felt like, you know, it had gone. If you go back to the game length there, Jesse, just on that graphic, you can see that the fourth game was really short compared to the other three. Yeah. So I just felt like it had just gone a little bit too easy. Can I just put a little bit of 5 minutes of work back into him, maybe plant the seed for a better start and bring the momentum back to me for the fifth? That was all I was thinking at that point.
And that's what I was going to lead on to. I think you said to me that, I think what you said yourself, but actually the advice that your coach gave you between this fourth and fifth game was really, really sound. So can you reflect with us on that? What message you were receiving in this moment?
Yeah, I'm laughing because, you know, we're talking about a high level here. We're talking about the World Championship final. You know, I bet a lot of the people listening think the advice is really sort of detailed and really advanced, but the advice was to let your arm go and hack it.
Wow.
Literally.
The word hack it came in.
Wow. The word just hit the ball hard and just kind of get my body language going again, stop living in the sort of past, and just get out there and sort of play with your sort of heart rather than your head for a minute was a sort of message, because maybe I've just gone a little bit insular, intrinsic with my thought process. And yeah, like it's funny, isn't it, when you're talking about the highest match in the world and something as sort of baseline as hit the ball harder came into play.
Hey, but listen, if we skip forward a little bit, look at that scoreline now. Hey, 2-2, 9-2 up, and again, what's happening now? Like, can you really sense his body language changed? You know, he looks like he's throwing it into the front pretty quick. So sounds like that advice in that moment worked. Sorry, 2 points to this question is, did you really feel that momentum shift at the start of the game and then you just went with it? And then what's your feeling now towards the closing stages? So two kind of parts there.
Two parts. The first part is a little bit of luck. You need a little bit of luck along the way. I think the first point, you know, we had a good rally, hit a cross court, and I just stuck my racket out and didn't even see the ball. I think it landed in the AJ Bell fan on the front wall, and I lost the ball for a second. And I just stuck my arm out, and it, like there, you can see I just sort of flapped at that backhand volley. And it just went that far above the tin for a bit of a lucky win. You can see it here. I didn't see that. I didn't really move my feet, just a bit lucky. And got the winner, and that just settled everything down, you know. Just got that first point on the board. I cannot tell you how much better life seemed at that point. It was only one rally, but it made a big difference. You can see he's got a wry smile there because he knows it was lucky. From that point, I think I get a stroke in the next rally. Again, it settled me down even more. And very quickly, the momentum could change in high-level sport. You know, again, the crowd started getting a bit more vocal, a bit more into it. He suddenly starts thinking, perhaps, oh, I've been in a lot of these situations. I'm yet to win a world title at that point. So all this psychological baggage started to creep in the other way around now. And then towards the end, I felt like I could have played all day. It's really weird, you know, it was over 100 minutes, but by the end, I felt like I could have played for another 2 hours. I just felt like I was walking on water. And I looked across at him, and he looked like he was about to fall over any second. His legs about to buckle. And that's all psychological, by the way, because neither are true. You know, neither of those feelings are true. I couldn't play all day. He wasn't completely gone, but that's how it felt in those last few rallies.
And listen, like if you had to take a photograph, this is it, isn't it? Like I could bet you probably want to take a picture of that and frame it, because the moment where he's gone, hasn't he? Like, you know, it pretty much feels like resistant. He's looking at the floor. He's not even looking at you. You know, you've almost got the same not body language. I know that's how you do your serve, but he's looked up, and even there, like he just doesn't look engaged, does he? He's really kind of let that go. So, and again, I assume you're picking up on this in the match, aren't you? You're seeing these, you're noticing this.
You're picking up on it, but at the same time, you're ignoring it. You know, if I concentrate on him and go short too soon, and all of a sudden he gets a couple of points, who knows what happens if he gets back to 4-9, 5-9, it can get a bit edgy. So I'm just literally just keeping the foot on his throat, metaphorically speaking, and just making sure, you know, look, he hit a winner off the return of serve there. I didn't get the serve on the wall. I'm conscious that, you know, 2 or 3 of those, and it can change quickly. So I'm just staying on it.
Let's watch these last few rallies.
It's always disappointing how this match sort of ends, because the sort of clip, you know, whenever someone shows a sort of a match ball of you winning, it's sort of a return of serve into the tin. I remember being on Question of Sport, and that was the clip that sort of showed, and you're sort of thinking, oh, the match was 100 minutes long and we literally killed each other, and that's what you're going to show. Come on, it makes it look like I didn't work for it, but trust me, I did.
And it is again, credit to you for obviously breaking and getting him to this point, but it doesn't go out in a blaze of glory as much as
slightly more relaxing a feeling being at 10-2 than it was at sort of 11-10 the previous time I matched ball. You've got a little bit more margin for error at that point.
There we go.
Obviously, it's nice to get it done first time. Definitely nice to get it done first time.
Yeah. There we go. There's the dad. Loving it. Parky there. Brilliant. Awesome work, man. And then, was this Greg's second final? Can you remember?
Yeah, I believe it was his fourth at that time. Fourth world final, yeah. And he had, in his very first, he had, I think, certainly a half a dozen of match balls against David Palmer way back in 2006. So potentially a bit of baggage coming in at that point once he got into that fifth as well.
Amazing. And I think a very nice way to finish this little section of the conversation, Nick. What happened when you played Gultier next time? So you've got the title in your bag. Talk about when you played him next and the spillover from this match.
Yeah, I mentioned the sort of spillover from the time in Philadelphia in the US Open when he sort of dusted me up, and played him again a few weeks later in Hong Kong on the open air court there, and managed to beat him in 5 again, and he sort of went again in fifth. He got really tired again in the fifth, so really used this as a sort of template and a game plan to use next time. And I knew that when we got into the fifth that I had the edge on him again into the sort of fourth and fifth games a couple of times around, and managed to, I was playing really well at that time. I was sort of in the prime of my career, and I got up to world number 1 after that Hong Kong match. And I think that was the last time I sort of did so in my career. So was obviously playing really well and carried that momentum on at that stage in my life.
Amazing. Good stuff. Well, thank you for going through that, Nick, and sharing and all these little timestamps. And I bet it's not the worst thing for you to go through, is it? I think it's quite nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm probably not going to be that productive now the rest of the day because I'm going to be living in the past.
But you've got COVID at the moment, I believe, have you?
I'm off, unfortunately. Yeah, just tested positive this week. I'm coming back from the US, so having a few days in forced rest. Fortunately, I'm feeling healthy. I'm feeling fine, and a couple of days off probably won't do me any harm in the long run.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we all wish you to get there quick and back out into the world. So let me finish off this little section before we jump into our Q&A with another quiz question, everyone. And I'll go through the answers right at the end, as well, because hopefully some of you would want to know the answers. So the quiz question, I might have used this one a little bit higher up with a bit of a boxing analogy. So the question is, who said this quote? Squash is boxing with rackets. So one famous player said that squash is boxing with rackets. Was it either A, Jeff Hunt, B, David Palmer, or C, Jonah Barrington? So again, who said squash is boxing with rackets? A, Jeff Hunt, B, David Palmer, or C, Jonah Barrington? Nick, thumbs up if you know it. Do you think you got that one? Yeah, perfect. Good stuff. Okay, awesome. Right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a bit. So I've got a few good questions that were sent in before. I think this will probably really wrap us up nicely in the next maybe 10 minutes or so. So I've got 3 questions and a quiz question to finish the whole thing off. So let me start with the first question, Nick. And again, some of these are a little bit mental toughness, but some aren't. So first question from one of the guests is, when you were going through a depressing period and you may have wanted to give up, this might have happened to you, but if you can imagine for, maybe amateur, any advice for overcoming this?
Yeah, it happened a lot, particularly in my younger days, questioning whether you sort of had the love and whether you wanted to keep working. And freshness was always the key to that battle. Freshness wins the day. So whether that's just taking a couple of days off, whether it's a week off, whether it's a change of scene, we're not robots. We work very much like anything else in our lives, whether that's a laptop or a mobile phone or, those things need to be charged from time to time. They need to be turned off. Cars, putting petrol in it, all of these analogies. And, sometimes the mindset is, I need to work harder. I need to go work even harder than before. I need to keep working. And that's true as well. But coming at that hard work with a fresh perspective, having had some time off and reestablishing why you do it, reestablishing sort of that wanting to be there rather than dragging yourself there from time to time was really important for me. Sometimes at the end of every season I always took 3 weeks off. I know players only take a week or maximum 2. I used to take 3 weeks off, and quite often I'd get to that 3 and my dad would say, "Are you feeling rested?" And I'd say, "Almost." He said, "We'll take another week." So sometimes I took a month off at the end of the season. I'd sometimes do some easy jogging or stretching, but I wouldn't go on the court for a month. And I think that was one of the reasons why I had longevity in my career, because I always tried to find ways to keep it fresh.
And well, that's really good advice to hear from someone like you, who's known as, physically right at the peak of his game, lasted a long time in the game, mentally tough. And I think a lot of juniors I work with, even like kind of young pros, and you might feel the same, they almost feel like a little bit of a guilt of taking even like a few days off. But I think what I'm hearing you say is rest periods can be as important as the training period. So how do you use, again, maybe similar to what you said, but when you have those pros, how do you sell rest to someone who might be pushing back against it?
Yeah, definitely just see it as being sort of the thing that unlocks the priority sessions, so the hard session, if you've got this one session, this one match in a week that you really want to perform well in, and then you just look back over the week and say, well, that's not been possible because of the cumulative fatigue or mental fatigue that's happening, then you've got to circle these sessions and factor in some rest to allow you to go and compete. And rest comes in different forms, right? It comes in a sort of conscious rest where you're deliberately taking some time off, but also that unconscious rest, like getting good sleep and sleeping enough hours and having good nutrition helps you to recover, and doing right things with your body as well over a period of time. There's also that sort of just going to do something different and having a sort of mental rest, whatever that might be, going and having those things in your life, and everyone's individual. It might be going for a game of golf, or it might be going for a walk, or it might be going to play computer games with your friend, whatever it is, but it's just having something that allows you to switch off. So there's different ways to sort of establish rest, but I try to sell it to them by it'll make your better days better.
Sound advice, make your better days better. I think, yeah, definitely going to coin that one in the next few weeks, Nick, so thanks. And I'll credit you, don't worry. I'll be like, source Nick Matthew. He's the one. Okay,
I've just made that on myself. I'm going to use it myself. I just thought of that now.
It's great when that happens as a coach, isn't it? You kind of just talk and you just come across this kind of key phrase. You're like, yes, that's what I can use. So second question is, how many hours did you train when you were 16? So maybe 16, but in that rough bracket, what was your kind of hours of training at that point?
So still at school, at that point. So for me, it was mainly sort of after school. Sometimes you'd sneak in, something during the day, but it was very difficult. So for me, it was sort of an hour and a half after school. Weekends with tournaments. Where I got my real improvement was those sort of blocks of Easter holidays, summer holidays, where you could sort of map out a proper plan and then sort of trained like a pro sort of in those windows, sort of through the season, sort of when you're at school, prioritizing life and being a kid as well. You don't want to burn out by 18. And again, talking about that all important balance again, wanting to further your squash, but not burning out at a young age.
And how did that process work in the holiday time in particular? Because that's a really great way to look at it. Obviously, everyone's under pressure with school. Did you have advice doing it? Did you go about it yourself? Who did you plot it with? How did that look for the people who want to maybe develop their holiday programs?
My dad, simply, he was a PE teacher, and he worked out a lot of things together with, and did a lot of research and hooked me up all these different interesting drills, whether that was out on the track doing some sprints or, it wasn't just squash. As a young kid, played a lot of different sports, but we were always active doing something. And then probably when I got to about 16, he sort of actively sought out a little bit more sort of support and help. Got in touch with a couple of sports scientists and just sort of said, look, my son wants to do a little bit more structured training. Would you be able to help? And got a little bit of advice that we sort of paid for ourselves. And then by the time I was 18, I was lucky enough that the sort of lottery funding came in, and that was when we had a little bit more sort of rounded support outside the court, and that was obviously fantastic timing for my career.
Nice, cool, thank you. Okay, so last question for the Q&A little section. How do you always be mentally 100% ready to play at your best?
Yeah, the short answer is you're not. I think it's actually something that I didn't realize until later is that, in this strive for perfection, you can be unrealistic. And we sort of started to sort of coin a phrase, sort of 8 out of 10 thinking or 80% thinking, where on any given day, you feel differently than what you did the day before. Or, people harp on about, I played my best in this tournament sort of 18 months ago, or when I was playing like this, I did this. And it's, that's in the past. You're no longer that person. You're the person you are today. And actually realizing that there's things from that you can learn, there's things that you can take, but you are the person that you are today. So the circumstances, the cards that you've got on that day, live in the present moment a little bit more and try to be 80% consistent in everything you do, and let that 20% be off with the wind a little bit, and stop trying to control 100% of things. Sort of say, look, if I can get 80% right, every single day, I'm going to start being consistent with my training, with my mental approach, with my preparation, with everything, with my mindset. And then you learn to realize, well, that's 20%. Some days might be on fire. On other days, it might not quite be there, but at least you're consistent, because 80%, if it was the other way around, or it was a 50-50, there's too much variety going on, and there's too much, therefore, inconsistency. So we tried to get a bit of an 8 out of 10 thought process, and not try to be perfect every single good day, because it's actually impossible.
Yeah, I love that advice. I think when we had one of our chats, I think that was one of the key nuggets. I've played that back to a few of my juniors, and it's really given them almost like a little bit of mental softening to go, it's okay not to be 100 the whole time. And there's like that buffer zone you fill in. But I love also what you said there, that if you go all the way down to 50-50, you know what, you probably can give yourself a lot of excuses then as well. You can kind of go, actually, it wasn't my day. But I think, yeah, that 80-20 is such a great little nugget. So thanks for sharing. And anyone listening about mental toughness, you know, it's a really, really good one there. So I'd highly recommend it. And you know, if you force anything, Nick, as we know, once you force things, you know, it never really ends up the right way. It's about finding, you said the word balance is so key. So no, lovely to hear that. Okay, last quiz question, everyone, and then we'll go back through the answers and then probably start to wrap it up. Okay, so fingers at the ready. Who was the last male non-Egyptian world number one? I think we know there's going to be a new world number one in March. If no one knows, maybe I won't give the surprise away, but a new non-Egyptian world number one in March, sorry, next month, February. Who was the last male non-Egyptian world number one? Was it A, the man himself, Nick Matthew? Was it B, Gregory Gaultier? Or was it C, James Willstrop? So A, B, or C, everyone. A, Nick Matthew, B, Gaultier, C, James Willstrop. Who was the last male non-Egyptian world number one? Nick, Greg, or James? Awesome. Okay, let's go back quickly through the answers then, Nick. Right, so very first one. How many world titles have you won, Nick Matthew?
3.
3, nice one. Good stuff. How many months have you been at world number one?
19.
19, so that was B for that one. Where is Nick Matthew's hometown?
Sheffield.
Sheffield, there we go. Have I missed one? Nope, I don't think so. And then I've got 2 more, sorry. Who said squash is boxing with rackets?
I thought it was Jonah.
It is Jonah.
Wrong. Yeah,
it is Jonah. It is Jonah. Boxing with rackets. Nick, again, I don't think I know this either, but we've obviously heard squash is chess on legs. That's quite a common one. Any idea where that's been sourced from? I've never really known where that came from.
I don't know. PJ says it a lot on the commentary on Squash TV, so maybe PJ. But yeah, it's like, you know, it's like chess on legs, chess on wheels, isn't it? Like, you know, it's physical chess. All of these things have been sort of used to describe squash, and I think from the mental point of view, that's a great way of putting it, because you sort of, you know, it's like chess, the positioning, the sort of mentality, but then it's got the physical element to it as well.
And actually really nerding out here. I've just finished watching The Queen's Gambit. I'm late to the show. It's been on Netflix for a couple of years, and there's actually a lot of visualization on chess and how she plays chess and visualizes the moves. So for me, that's up my street, visualization, mental toughness. Right? Have you seen it yet, Nick?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I saw it in lockdown, I think, that one.
What do you think?
You've been late to the table. You've been late to the table on that one, Jesse.
Disappointing. Okay, last quiz question answer. Who was the last male non-Egyptian world number one? Nick, can you answer that one?
I would love to say it was me, but it wasn't. It was Gregory Gaultier.
It was Greg, I know. Was this the one where he got back to world number one late in his career? Was that the one we're talking about?
Yeah, he got back quite late. He had an amazing patch. I'm trying to think of the year, might have been 2016, 2017. He got back and he won. I remember him winning El Guna and going there and sort of beating the Egyptian in the backyard, which of course Paul Cole did in black ball. It's always a good way. It's funny because that was the way I got to number one the first time, by winning a tournament in Cairo, the sort of old Petrosport. You know, it's kind of like beating Brazil at soccer, or, you know, by beating the All Blacks in New Zealand at rugby. I think beating the Egyptians in Egypt at squash, you kind of deserve to go to number one on the back of that. So, you know, good luck to Paul next month.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, as if you didn't know, Paul Cole to world number one. What was you actually sent me a question, Nick, about the New Zealand number one. What was can you remember that one off the top of your head, putting you on the spot here a bit?
I don't think New Zealand have had a previous world number one male. I think they've had a couple in the, well, they certainly had Susan Devoy back in the day in the women's. I think Carol Owens got to number 1, and I also think Leilani Joyce, formerly Leilani Rarani, got to number 1. So I think potentially they've had 3 in the women's, but this Paul is their first ever male number 1. I think Ross Norman got to number 2.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
I sound like the guy on a quiz, on a Pointless or something there, just explaining the answer, don't I?
Hey, that's what we're here for. We love this, getting really into the granular nerdiness of squash, and yeah, we love it too bit. So, okay, listen, everyone. I think this is a really nice place to start to wrap it up. This has been an absolute pleasure and a treat for me watching the match with Nick, talking with Nick leading up to it. You know, I think we're both coaches now and really trying to help players, and I think, you know, Nick, people in your stable, so to speak, are really getting tutored in the right way. So thank you so much for all this help, all this attention to detail. Any final messages for the group, Nick, around, you know, this, again, it's such a big concept of mental toughness, but any final nugget you think everyone could go away on just to reflect on in the next few weeks or months?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we focused things around one match just because we felt like it had sort of a backstory and it linked to the topic well, rather than a sort of a general topic on mental toughness. Because obviously, you know, by putting it into the specifics of a match, we could maybe get into the nitty gritty and the finer details. So hopefully everyone took something from that. Always great to chat to Jesse because he's got a fantastic insight. I know you guys in India have got a fantastic relationship, both with yourself and Squash Skills as a whole. And look forward to, yeah, it's been a while. It's been a minute since I've been across to India. So, you know, me and you, Jesse, will have to come and see everyone in person at some point in the foreseeable future.
Definitely. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, Nick. I'm going to pass it back to Cyrus. Cyrus, if you're there, are there any final messages from any of you, from you, please?
Nick and Jesse, y'all are most welcome to come to India, and we really look forward to that. So thanks so much, Nick. You know, it was wonderful to get an insight into your mind. We all miss watching you on court, but this interaction was lovely today. So thank you again. And for all those watching, in the chat box, you can sign up for Squash Skills. The link's over there. So do that at the earliest. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Cyrus.
Thank you.